We are so honored and fortunate to have this man as our keynote speaker. He is a former Assistant U.S. Attorney, U.S. Army officer, fellow at the Halloran Center for Ethical Leadership in the Professions, a distinguished fellow and law professor at St. Thomas University, and recurring speaker at Minnesota Boys State. Please welcome Mr. Hank Shea.
Thank you, Dave and Lexa, and everybody who's made this day possible. Let me start with a question for all of us. This is not going to be a one-person speaking performance. I want to get all of us involved in this journey that you're about to undertake today. So the question for everybody here is, what is the greatest challenge facing our state and our nation at the present time? And I'll do a pass on this one because I think if we spend some time, we could end up with a pretty similar answer for many of us, and that's our current economic crisis. You can't read the paper, watch TV, talk to your parents or your friends without having to touch some part of your lives these days. Now, how many people believe here, and this is where you have to start getting involved. We'll just do it by raising your hands. We'll start out that way. How many people believe that our current economic crisis is due in part to a lack of ethics? Raise your hand. All right. How many think that our current economic crisis in part is due to a failure or a lack of leadership? Raise your hand. I would agree with all of you. The bottom line is, though, that it's not just a lack of ethics and leadership in Washington, D.C. or on Wall Street. It's a lack of ethics and leadership in every community in this country, in our schools, in our businesses, in our organizations. And that's why I've titled my remarks today, Our Greatest Challenge, Creating Ethical Leaders. Now, some of you may be questioning that and thinking maybe that's what's going on out in the East Coast, but it's not the case here in Minnesota. So let's take a little poll, and everybody's got to be involved in this if you're a high school student or a recent graduate. I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I'll do it like we do it with juries. So I'm not asking you to identify yourself. The question will be, do you know a high school student? It doesn't need to be you. It can be a friend, classmate. First question. Do you know a high school student who has cheated at school in the last year? Raise your hand. Okay, how many say no? Second question. How many of you know a high school student who stole something from a store in the last year? Raise your hand. Not as many. Third question. How many of you know a high school student who has lied to save money sometime in the last year? Fewer. Well, do you know they ask these questions every 2 years to high school students throughout the country? There's an institute out in California who does a biannual survey of 30,000 high school students. Every state, public school, private school, parochial school, everybody's asked. And they reported the results recently for 2008. Some of you might have seen it. It was reported in some of the media. 64% of high school students said that they had cheated in the last year in high school, not through somebody else. 30% said they had stolen from a store in the last year. And 42% said they had lied to save money in the last year. And you know what's the scary thing, the really scary thing about all this? 2 things. Those statistics are bad, but at the end of the exam, they asked the students how many had lied on the survey. 26% said they had lied. And all of the experts, which I am not, say that when you ask that question, it means that people are underreporting. When they, at the end, have a chance to come clean and say, yeah, I lied. So these statistics may actually be worse than they already are. And the second part, and the part that I think is central to today, they asked the students at the very end how many were satisfied with their personal ethics. 93% said yes, they were satisfied with their personal ethics. Now, this is not an indictment of just high school students. Let's be clear about this. This is an American dilemma. What starts in high school doesn't stop in high school. I teach law students, and I reported to them, they did a nationwide survey recently, 5,000 business schools and law school students, and the law school students reported 46% had cheated in law school the prior year. And you know what the statistics were for business school? 54% of students getting MBAs said they had cheated in the prior year. It doesn't stop in school. I mean, next week, your parents, or for some of us, all of us are going to have that annual temptation of having to file our federal tax returns. And the statistics vary. I prosecuted a lot of tax evasion cases during my career, but there is no doubt that a minority, a substantial minority of Americans, underreport their income, overreport their deductions, do not file true tax returns each year. And it costs all of us hundreds of billions, that is, of dollars each year. So this is an American dilemma, an American crisis. The reason we're here today, I think, is to try and start finding a solution to the problems presented by this conduct. And you will be taking the first step. As Dave and Lex have already told you, you'll be sitting with peers, sitting with cadets, recent graduates, and one of the things you'll be doing are tackling scenarios, little ethical dilemmas, things that happen in school, happen in your homes on a regular basis, and trying to figure out what's the right course of action. So what I thought I would do today would be to take a different tack by looking at some of the challenges, some of the opportunities I faced in my life to address the issue of how we create ethical leaders. Because I say to everyone here, you each have the ability to become an ethical leader. You do not have to be the smartest in school, or the best athlete, or the best dressed. I'm evidence of that. You have that potential. And the question is, are you going to tap it? Are you going to realize it? So we're going to do this with, I hope, a pretty straightforward outline. I decided not to use a PowerPoint. I'm going to give you 5 lessons that I learned and I want to share with you, and then one reminder, and then we'll hopefully have some time for your questions.